Welcome to my channel. Welcome back to my channel. Every month in my VO workshop, we do something called the VO Challenge. And the way you join my VO workshop is as soon as you take your very first class with me, and even if you only ever take one class with me, I invite you to join my private group of talent as part of my VO workshop, and I email you once a month, and in that email are the details for that given month's VO challenge. And every month it's something different. It's just a way for us to stay sharp, exercise our skills, and inspire each other along the way. And this month we're doing long-form narration. So not really so much commercial work or trailer or promo. Long-form narration, maybe an excerpt from a book, be it fiction or nonfiction. It can be a documentary. It can be e-learning material or even corporate presentation. That I left up to you, but I ask that your submissions be between 1 minute and 3 minutes. Anything within those time parameters, and you'll see that. Producing a video is always optional. All that is required to participate in the VO challenge is your audio file, and in this case, dry voice was acceptable this month. If you wanted to put music under it, you could. If you wanted to put sound effects under it, you could, but that, again, was optional. And then, if I haven't said so already, producing a video is optional, although some talent produced a slideshow presentation, and some people were a little bit more elaborate with their video production. But don't ever feel discouraged and think that I don't have any video production skills, so I can't participate in the VO challenge, because that's never required. So let's, with no further delay, let us enjoy. These are the submissions to the VO Challenge of April 2025.
"12,000 years ago, nature released the Earth from the grip of an ice age. Since then, we have tamed the wilderness, pioneered technologies, and as our numbers multiplied, built cities, nations, and empires. No part of the world has been left untouched. As scientists race to understand the huge impact we have on our planet, they have opened an astonishing new window on our past. Human history is a product of its environment." "3,200 years ago, humanity suffered one of the biggest setbacks in history.
It's like you hit the reset button on human civilization in the West.
Thriving cultures vanished within the span of a single human life, amid waves of violent destruction.
The amount of things that we lost is just amazing.
The complete collapse of multiple societies at the same times means that writing systems go extinct, languages go extinct.
Now, explosive new data collected by scientists across the globe has blown open the mystery of the Bronze Age collapse, revealing how climate change has driven our past just as much as it will drive our future."
The Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum is a landmark in Boston, modeled after a 15th century Venetian palace. It holds the private collection of heiress and art patron, Isabella Stewart Gardner. 8:15 a.m., Sunday, March 18, 1990. Guards arrive for their shift at the Gardner Museum. The guards are surprised to find the security desk empty. They radio the overnight guards, but get no reply. So they call the Boston police. The police find the guards in the basement, bound and handcuffed to the pipes. The men are tied up with duct tape. Not only duct tape on their hands and feet, but also duct tape around their faces, their eyes. The first thing the police did after freeing the guards and getting their statements was search the museum for evidence. What they discover is that the place has been robbed. The police are shocked at what they see in two galleries. Police find the galleries in disarray with broken glass, paint chips on the floor, scraps of canvas hanging from frames, with the paintings themselves missing. Some have been taken carefully and unscrewed out of their frames. Others have been cut out. One piece has also been taken from a third gallery, known as the Blue Room. It's the only piece taken from the first floor of the museum. The theft is massive. 13 pieces of artwork, valued today at about $500 million. The theft is the largest unsolved art theft in history, as well as the largest theft of property in America.
The Body Keeps the Score by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. Research from these new disciplines has revealed that trauma produces actual physiological changes, including a recalibration of the brain's alarm system, an increase in stress hormone activity, and alterations in the system that filters relevant information from irrelevant. We now know that trauma compromises the brain area that communicates the physical, embodied feeling of being alive. These changes explain why traumatized individuals become hypervigilant to threat at the expense of spontaneously engaging in their day-to-day lives. They also help us understand why traumatized people so often keep repeating the same problems and have such trouble learning from experience. We now know that their behaviors are not the result of moral failings or signs of lack of willpower or bad character. They are caused by actual changes in the brain. This vast increase in our knowledge about the basic processes that underlie trauma has also opened up new possibilities to palliate or even reverse the damage. We can now develop methods and experiences that utilize the brain's own natural neuroplasticity to help survivors feel fully alive in the present and move on with their lives.
Ashen Winter by Mike Mullen. Read by Dan Britt. Chapter 1. 10 months had passed since I'd last seen the sun. The rich blue of that final August sky was fading from my memory. Colors are slippery. If you cover your eyes and try to remember blue, you see black. Now we had a yellowish-gray sky, dark as a heavily overcast day. Darla said Yellowstone's eruption had hurled billions of tons of fine ash and sulfur dioxide into the stratosphere, and it might be years before the sky returned to normal. I said the dim light was depressing. In April, we prayed for a break in the winter, a warm spell to melt the 4-foot blanket of snow smothering my uncle's farm. But April was colder than March, May colder still. In June, the mercury in the Farmall tractor thermometer hanging outside the kitchen window fell below 0 and stayed there. Every day, we watched the thin red line try to claw its way to 0. Every day it failed. The storms that had followed the eruption had spent their fury, and drought clutched us in its dry fist. My world was frozen, desiccated, and dead. I was always cold. Cold as I worked during the day, cutting wood, hauling snow to melt for water, or digging for the corn buried under the snow and ash. Cold when I went to bed, cold when I got up in the morning despite Darla snuggled against my side. Before the volcano, if you'd have told me that I'd be sleeping every night beside a girl I loved, I'd have said you were crazy. Mom would have filleted me and served the choice bits as hors d'oeuvres if I'd ever so much as closed the door with a girl in my room. Not that any girls would have wanted to be alone with me. Before I met Darla, I'd had a total of 1 real girlfriend, and she dumped me before we'd done much more than make out. I still didn't think of myself as having a girlfriend. That word was too trivial for what Darla meant to me. When I met her on the road last year, I was bleeding, starving, and ready to give up. Ready to die. Without each other, we wouldn't have escaped from Iowa, from the devastation and chaos Yellowstone had caused. Now I wouldn't want to survive, to endure the desperate labor and daily frostbite without Darla. But if Mom showed up now, fillet knife in hand, to scold me for sleeping next to Darla, I'd hug her and savor every second of the scolding. She and Dad had left my uncle's farm near Warren, Illinois, leaving my younger sister Rebecca there with my aunt and uncle. Darla and I had arrived at the farm in early October, 5 weeks after my parents had left to look for me. No one had seen or heard from them since. And Mom wouldn't find me sleeping alone with Darla anyway. In April, the falling temperature had forced us to abandon the upstairs bedrooms at my uncle's. Now, Darla and I slept in a clump with my aunt, uncle, 2 cousins, and sister on the living room floor near the fire. A night spent spooning with your girlfriend isn't nearly so exciting when your uncle is curled up against your other side.
The Parma Company history. In the beginning, Parma Company, located in Parma, Idaho, is the continuing operation of a company that first began in 1907 as a blacksmith shop shortly after agriculture began to flourish in the southwestern region of Idaho. The original company was Rose Brothers Blacksmith, who started into the manufacturing business by building specialty farm equipment. Their first product was the Parma water lifter pump, which is still an integral part of the business today. Due to the success of the pump in the late 1920s, the name of the company was changed to the Parma Water Lifter Company. With the growing modernization of agriculture in the 1930s through the 1950s, the company continued to expand to meet the needs of the larger tractor-powered farm equipment. The product lines included field corrugators, manure spreaders, truck boxes, and other cultivating tools. In July of 1956, Parma Water Lifter Company purchased from Gate City Steel a rotary flail beater called the Olson Rotary Beater. This propelled them into the sugar beet harvesting industry and eventually to the development of one of the first sugar beet harvesters. From that beginning, they became a leading manufacturer of sugar beet harvesting equipment. Over the next 4 decades, sugar beet harvesters and defoliators would become the company's mainstay.
There was a little girl child who had neither a mother nor a father, and she lived in the dark forest. There was a village at the edge of the forest, and she had learned she could buy matches for a halfpenny there, and that she could sell them on the street for a full penny. If she sold enough matches, she could buy a crust of bread, return to her lean-to in the forest, and sleep there dressed in all the clothes she owned. The winter came, and it was very cold. She had no shoes, and her coat was so thin you could see through it. Her feet were past the point of being blue. Her toes were white. So were her fingers and the end of her nose. She wandered the streets and begged strangers, would they please buy matches from her? But no one stopped, and no one paid any attention. So she sat down one evening saying, "I have matches. I can light a fire and I can warm myself." But she had no kindling and no wood. She decided to light the matches anyway. As she sat there with her legs straight out in front of her, she struck the first match. And as she did, it seemed that the cold and the snow disappeared altogether. What she saw instead of swirling snow was a room, a beautiful room, with a great dark green ceramic stove with a door with iron scrollwork. The stove emanated so much heat it made the air wavy. She snuggled up close to the stove, and it felt heavenly. But all of a sudden the stove went out, and she was again sitting in the snow, shivering so bitterly the bones in her face chimed. And so she struck the second match, and the light fell upon the wall of the building next to where she sat, and she could suddenly see through it. In the room behind the wall was a snowy cloth covering a table, and there on the table were china plates of the purest white, and on the platter was a goose that had just been cooked. And just as she was reaching for this repast, the vision disappeared. She was again in the snow, but now her knees and her hips no longer hurt. Now the cold was stinging and burning its way up her arms and torso. And so she lit the third match. And in the light of the third match was a beautiful Christmas tree, beautifully decorated with white candles with lacy ruffs and beautiful glass ornaments, and thousands of little dots of light that she couldn't quite make out. And she looked up the trunk of this enormous tree that went higher and higher and stretched farther and farther toward the ceiling until it became the stars in the heaven over her head. And suddenly, a star blazed across the sky, and she remembered her mother had told her when a soul dies, a star falls. And out of nowhere, her grandmother appeared.
There is evidence that the formation of the solar system began about 14.6 billion years ago with the gravitational collapse of a small part of a giant molecular cloud. Most of the collapsing mass collected in the center was forming the sun, while the rest flattened into a protoplanetary disk out of which the planets, moons, asteroids, and other small solar system bodies formed. This model, known as the nebular hypothesis, was first developed in the 18th century by Emanuel Swedenborg, Immanuel Kant, and Pierre-Simon Laplace. Its subsequent development has interwoven a variety of scientific disciplines, including astronomy, chemistry, geology, physics, and planetary science. Since the dawn of the space age in the 1950s and the discovery of exoplanets in the 1990s, the model has been both challenged and refined to account for new observations. The solar system has evolved considerably since its initial formation. Many moons have formed from circling disks of gas and dust around their parent planets, while other moons are thought to have formed independently and later to have been captured by their planets. Still others, such as Earth's moon, may be the result of giant collisions. Collisions between two bodies have occurred continually up to the present day and have been central to the evolution of the solar system. Beyond Neptune, many subplanet-sized objects formed. Several thousand trans-Neptunian objects have been observed. Unlike the planets, these trans-Neptunian objects mostly move on eccentric orbits, inclined to the plane of the planets. The positions of the planets might have shifted due to gravitational interactions. The process of planetary migration explains parts of the solar system's current structure. In roughly 5 billion years, the sun will cool and expand outward to many times its current diameter, becoming a red giant, before casting off its outer layers as a planetary nebula and leaving behind a stellar remnant known as a white dwarf. In the distant future, the gravity of passing stars will gradually reduce the sun's retinue of planets. Some planets will be destroyed, and others ejected into interstellar space. Ultimately, over the course of tens of billions of years, it is likely that the sun will be left with none of the original bodies in orbit around it.
Suddenly, he found himself speeding along an unfamiliar country highway, and as he looked back over his shoulder, neither the toll booth, nor his room, nor even the house was anywhere in sight. What had started as make-believe was now very real. "Welcome to Expectations," said a carefully lettered sign on a small house at the side of the road. "Information, predictions, and advice cheerfully offered. Park here and blow horn." With the first sound from the horn, a little man in a long coat came rushing from the house, speaking as fast as he could and repeating everything several times. My, welcome, 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 welcome to the land of expectations, to the land of expectations, to the land of expectations. We don't get many travelers these days. We certainly don't get many travelers these days. Now, what can I do for you? I'm the weatherman. Is this the right road for Dictionopolis? Asked Milo, a little bowled over by the effusive greeting. Well now, he began again. I don't know of any wrong road to Dictionopolis, so if this road goes to Dictionopolis at all, it must be the right road. And if it doesn't, it must be the right road to somewhere else, because there are no wrong roads to anywhere. Do you think it will rain? I thought you were the weatherman, said Milo, very confused. Oh no, said the little man. I'm the weatherman, not the weatherman, for after all, it's more important to know whether there will be weather than what the weather will be. And with that, he released a dozen balloons that sailed off into the sky. Must see which way the wind is blowing, he said, chuckling over his little joke and watching them disappear in all directions. What kind of place is Expectations? Inquired Milo, unable to see the humor and feeling very doubtful of the little man's sanity. Good question, he exclaimed. Expectations is the place you must always go to before you get to where you're going. Of course, some people never go beyond expectations, but my job is to hurry them along whether they like it or not. Now, what else can I do for you? And before Milo could reply, he rushed into the house and reappeared a moment later with a new coat and an umbrella. I think I can find my own way, said Milo, not at all sure that he could. But since he didn't understand the little man at all, he decided that he might as well move on, at least until he met someone whose sentences didn't always sound as if they would make as much sense backwards as forwards.
Irises by Vincent van Gogh, 1889. Irises is an oil painting by Dutch artist Vincent van Gogh. Painted in 1889, the work is a landscape with a cropped composition and is one of several hundred paintings from a series of paintings that Van Gogh made at the Saint-Paul-de-Mossoul Asylum in Saint-Rémy-de-Provence, France, in the last year before his death in 1890. Irises was among the first paintings that Van Gogh started after arriving voluntarily at the asylum. It preceded his first bout of mental instability there, and at first glance, shows no evident trace of the moodiness and high tension that appear in many of the later works. He paints the flowers with admiration and joy. Most original is the drawing of the irises. Unlike the Impressionist flower works in which the plants are formless spots of color, these are carefully studied for their shapes and individualized, with the same sincerity and precision as Van Gogh's portraits. He discovers an endless variety of curved silhouettes, a new source of movement in what might easily have become a static, ornamental repetition of the same motif. These wavy, flaming, twisted, and curling lines, broken and pointed, anticipate the later works done at Saint-Rémy. Irises broke the record for the most expensive artwork in 1987 when it sold for $53.9 million, setting a record which stood for 2.5 years. Since 1990, Irises has been in the permanent collection of the J. Paul Getty Museum in Los Angeles.